Hello everyone, I'm DeAngelo with That's Entertainment, and this is your video review of Crackdown 2 by Ruffian Games. In the beginning of 2010, there was a balance of new intellectual properties and established franchises finding releases. As we draw closer and closer to the end of the year, those scales are tipping towards the dependable sequels, the next few months stacked full of them. Among the new installments in these series is Crackdown 2 for the Xbox 360. There was a significant amount of hype going into this latest game in the franchise, which is understandable, considering Ruffian Games had over 3 years to work the kinks out of the first game. With that in mind, did Crackdown 2 become all that the first game could have been?
These are exceptional times. Prepare for deployment.
After the success of the agency in the first game, peace returned to Pacific City. However, over the course of the 10 years following that story's ending, the city and its people were once again thrust into chaos. An overly ambitious scientist within the agency began taking unnecessary risks and was promptly removed from their service. Dejected, embarrassed, and bitter, she secretly worked her way back into the fold of the agency, where she destroyed the agent program and developed a virus that warped Pacific City's populace into mutated freaks. With the monstrous creatures roaming the streets, it didn't take much for her to convince those healthy remaining citizens that the agency held on to a cure, which it refused to release to the public. This false reveal caused all hell to break loose, a terrorist group called the Cell rising up in desperate need because of it. With all of Pacific City on the line, the agency has no choice but to send someone to stop it. With the ever-evolving powers of the agent, it might just be possible to save the city once again. Just like in the first game, there is plenty to do in this sandbox-type game. With the freaks and the Cell constantly on your back and marring the missions in front of you, you need to become a better agent. To help you in that endeavor, a massive orbs have been scattered all across the city. Collecting them augments your abilities, and allows you to become more of a superhuman than a mere mortal. You can add to your character's strength, allowing him to heave opponents like ragdolls. You can gain orbs for driving, which makes things that much easier. You can even collect orbs through multiplayer, which carries over to everyone. Of course, expanding your repertoire of moves are only half the battle. You also have to go out and do damage to your enemies. Unfortunately, the controls lean a little on the broken side. Things feel sloppy, which is depressing, because that was one of the main gripes of the original game. You'd think that the developer would have tried harder to move past that in this sequel. There is an odd balance of the enemies that come after you as well. At night the freaks come out, while in the daytime the Cell takes their place. It's a little plain and simple, but it ends up taking away from the complexity that you can see was possible throughout the city. The missions are a little more entertaining than what you might expect, though sometimes things seem to drag on a little while too long, especially when it is easy to make a control-related mistake. With 3 years on its back, Crackdown 2 should have had a much better presentation all around. Unfortunately, everything still has a rushed-out-the-door vibe. Nothing is terrible per se, but they aren't as good as they could be. The graphics are probably the most notably satisfactory element of the game's exterior. The cutscenes, in some respects, show that the game was capable of delivering more, however. The other portions of the game, the music, sound, and voice, are fairly mundane. There is no breaking ground here. While this works for much of the rest of the game, in the audio department it does leave things off in a mildly disappointing way. A lot of value comes from this release, but you need to know what parts you're looking for. You could end up spending a lot of time with this game, thanks to the massive size of Pacific City. Collecting all of the orbs and learning new ways to topple your opposition definitely helps to make the experience more fun. The real driving point for Crackdown 2 is in its multiplayer. The competitive game modes are enjoyable, but it's when you play cooperatively that things are really put into perspective. The style of play may help to sway your decision on whether or not to purchase this game.
That an explosion is imminent.
One of the worst things that a company can do is not listen to its consumers. Unfortunately, a lot of the flaws that made fans of the first game a little concerned have shown up in this game as well. What's worse, there are a few new but less notable complaints to bring to the table. Combining the messy input with the unimpressive story leaves gamers with a title that could certainly help to kill a whole lot of time, but it isn't anything too special. That's Entertainment awards Crackdown 2 a score of 7 out of 10.
What I'm saying is...